Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our Tanya, our Sunday morning Tanya class. We've had a long break because of all the Chagim, all the holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Kippur, and so on. But it's wonderful to be back. I welcome you all. In fact, it's a new beginning because besides it being a new year, we're also starting a new emphasis, a new topic in the Tanya, which is now, we're beginning today at chapter 38, which is on page 179 in your Tanya. As a introduction to what we're going to learn over here, I'd like to just recap and make a synopsis of what we learned in the last three chapters, 35, 36, and 37. As you know, the Tanya, the book that Alter Rebbe wrote, is based on the verse as he writes in his title page. In the beginning, the first page of the Tanya, on the title page, he says that this book is here to explain the verse in Deuteronomy, where Moshe tells the Jewish people, after he guides them in the desert for 40 years, at the end of the 40 years, when he's about to pass away and pass on the mantle of leadership to Yehoshua, to Joshua, and the Jews are now about to go into the land of Israel, well, life will change drastically. They're going from the desert, where manna fell from heaven every day, the water was miraculously extracted from a stone, and everything was there to provide it for them as, naturally, or supernaturally, but, it was just daily. Today, now, they're going into the land of Israel, and they're going to have to work for a living. It's life as we know it. So Moshe, in the end of the Torah, the last book, it gives them a very strong, passionate last talk. And he reminds them of everything that happened in the 40 years. Now God was guiding them miraculously from the Exodus and so on and so forth. And then he tells them that you should know, and this is the key verse that Alter Rebbe bases the Tanya on, when Moses tells the Jewish people, just in case you think that the Torah is some difficult thing that's beyond, it's over to cross the sea, you have to cross the sea to acquire it and to hold on to it and to observe it. Or you think it's in the heavens, we have to go up to the heavens to acquire it. In other words, sometimes we think that the Torah is a matter that is very, very difficult for us to observe, as many do think. Moshe tells them, you're wrong. It is not to cross the sea. It is not in the heavens. Rather, ki korei veilecha hadavar miyoid. The matter is very near to you. Beficha uvilvavcha la'aseise. In your mouth, in your heart, to do it. This matter is near to you. It's very, very accessible. Not only accessible in action, but it's accessible for you to do the mitzvahs with your mouth, learning Torah, davening, making blessings, which is something we do with our mouth, the speech. With our heart, which is even more a greater novelty, that not only is it accessible to you to perform an action, but it's near to you. It's very, very easy, so to say. Near seems to be indicating the easiness of it, to even have an emotional attachment to Judaism, the heart, la'asosei, to do it, and of course to perform the mitzvahs. So Moshe is basically telling them this matter is very, very close to you. And Alter Rebbe spent 35 chapters explaining how it's close to you. There's two methods, the short way, the long way. We won't go into that now. But in chapter 35, 36, and 37, Alter Rebbe explained in great detail that last word of the verse, la'asosei, to do. And he explained that is really the ultimate purpose of us living here on earth, is to the action mitzvahs. There are many different mitzvahs that we do, There are mitzvahs that you do with your mind, learning Torah, loving Hashem with your heart, with your mind. Those are mitzvahs. But he says ultimately the most important aspect of everything is la'aseh, to do them, the mitzvahs that we do with action. How did he explain this? Why did he make that distinction? Not that the other mitzvahs are not important, don't make that mistake for a second. But he's saying there's something extraordinarily important in the action mitzvahs that trumps everything else. And he explained as follows. For this we need to understand, why did God create the world to begin with? What was in this? What was the purpose for all of creation? So he refers us to the Midrash. The Midrash tells us that in the beginning, when God created the world, he had a reason, he had a desire. When you go through a project, any project, you have a reason for it. There's something you want out of it. What did God want out of creation? For which purpose he went through with creation? It's a big project. What?
Come down to earth.
That he should come down to earth.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. His purpose was, in the words of the Medrash,
to make a home.
To make a home for him down here in this lowest realm. What's the lowest realm?
The physical world.
The physical world. Why is the physical world the lowest realm? What makes it low?
Physicality.
What makes physicality low? Why is physical more lower than spiritual?
It's limited.
Spirituality is also limited to some degree. It's not a trick question. I want to explain it. Now, the Rebbe actually explains in chapter 36 what makes this world lower than other worlds, than the spiritual worlds. God is beyond it, infinitely beyond both. So what makes this lower than that? It's not a spatial thing, obviously. She says high and low in terms of Hashem is where is God more revealed and where is he less revealed.
Yeah, it's less revealed.
Over here is not only less revealed, he's completely concealed here. And that's what makes this physical world the lowest world. In the worlds of Atzilus, Bria, those higher spiritual worlds, although there's not there's some concealment, it's not the full revelation of Hashem, of his essence, let's say. It's already a God as he is more contracted, so to say, lowered himself, even in the spiritual world. But over there, in those worlds, God is apparent. God is revealed. There's no run. You can't make the mistake. An angel in the world of Yetzirah is never going to think maybe there's no God. God is absolutely revealed, just like you'll never say there's no table in here. It's revealed. But in this world, God is everywhere. He's in everything, but he's not revealed, completely concealed. To the point where you could think that there is no God. Many do. So this is a world of absolute concealment, not somewhat concealment. It's absolute concealment. And what was his reason? Why did he do this? Why would he make a world that completely conceals him? Who does such a thing?
Free will, so we have a choice.
So we have free will. Good, that's true. That's very true. But what does he want? So that we choose right from wrong. So we and in the process reveal his existence here.
And have a relationship. But in the words of the Midrash, what he wanted was to have a place where he starts out as complete concealment, and in that realm create a home for him. Now, I want to add something to this. Create a home means where what's a home? Where you dwell.
What's a home? Where you dwell. Who dwells in your home?
Family.
But say if you don't have a family, it's just you. I'm saying, what part of you dwells in your home?
Body.
Not only your body.
Your mind, your heart.
Your body, your spirit.
Your spirit.
So let me ask you, when you go to work, your body and spirit are not there?
Sure.
They're there too, right? Yeah, I hope so. You're doing a good job. You have to have your mind, your body, and spirit.
Your essence.
But in your home is your essence.
Right.
Your essence is in your home. When you go to work, if you're a doctor, you come as a professional. You come with your white, what do they call it? You come as a lawyer. Today they say everyone's going casually to work today, right? It's all casual. But no, then times past, people would project themselves. So if you're a doctor, you looked in a certain way. If you're a lawyer, you looked a certain way. You're foreman in a construction project, you looked a certain way. You had a certain uniform. A soldier wears a uniform of a soldier. Everyone has that. But when you come home, all those uniforms come off.
You put, and you stand on your couch, you plump down in your couch, and it's just you. It's the essence. When Scott says, "I want a home here," he means he wants his essence to be revealed here, and that's the great novelty of this physical world over the higher world. In Atzilus, in Bria, in those spiritual realms, Hashem's essence is not to be found. It is here. Now, how do you do this? How do we reveal Hashem's essence here? We all know. Through Torah and mitzvahs, obviously. But there's one more point here. He wanted to create that home for his essence where? Specifically in the physical world, where God is completely concealed. Where is he more concealed? In the physical, we just said, right? So now when you go and you look at Torah and mitzvahs, what kind of mitzvahs do we have? Let's go through a few of the mitzvahs. We have a mitzvah to shake a lulav on Sukkot. We have a mitzvah to pray in the morning or the afternoon 3 times a day. We have a mitzvah to give charity. Let's take those 3 mitzvahs, okay? What kind of mitzvah is prayer? In prayer, what part of us is engaged in prayer?
Your mind and your heart
mind
as well.
and your heart, yeah, okay. So very good, your mind and your heart. What part of your body and existence is engaged in the shaking of a lulav?
Your hands.
Your hands. So, the human being is made up of soul and body, correct? Our soul, we learned in Tanya, is made up of 10 faculties. The intellectual part of the soul, and there's the emotional part of the soul, and then the body is the body, the physical body. When you pray, which is a mitzvah, you make the grace after meals. It's a mitzvah, right? Prayer is a mitzvah of the heart. It's a mitzvah of the mind. You're thanking Hashem. You're feeling close to Hashem. You're praising Hashem. With what part of your body do you praise Hashem? Who's praising Hashem? Your soul. It's more of a soulful engagement. The soul is engaged in that more than your body, let's say. It's a deeper, even within the body, if you will say, it's the deepest aspects of your body, the more spiritual parts of your body, your mind, your heart, it's the emotions, the intellect. It's not the physical part of your body. When you're shaking a lulav, what is engaged in the mitzvah? Your physical hands. Your mind and heart they may be there, they may not be there, but you're actually moving your body in an act of godliness. Giving charity. You're taking $1 out of your pocket and giving it to a poor person. It's a very physical act. Do you have to have kavanah, a deep intention when you give charity? I'm doing this for God, and my heart loves Hashem, that's why I'm doing this. You know the story with the Jew that once came to the Baal Shem Tov, or the Alter Rebbe, I think it was the Alter Rebbe, the author of Tanya, and told Alter Rebbe, he was a wealthy man actually. He used to give a lot of charity, gave charity, and then one year he was like a little lax in that he wasn't giving charity. So the Alter Rebbe asked him what happened, he used to give, and business bad, business down, what's happened? He says, no, business is very good. He said, then why did you stop giving charity? He says, I'll tell you the honest truth, I learned Torah, I learned Chassidus, and I learned that, a person has to be humble, and a person has to be less about himself and more dedicated to higher things. And I started feeling, when I gave charity, people would honor me, and people would give me a lot of kavod, a lot of respect. And it made my ego, it grew my ego. And he says, I want to check on my ego a little bit, so I'm going to refrain from those things that bring me honor and so on. And so I said, I'd cut down on my charity, because that was giving me, I was feeling good about it, and people make me feel good about it. And I said, that shouldn't be the focus. I have to slow down on that. So the Alter Rebbe told him like this. When you give a sandwich to the poor person, he's eating it. The Jew told the Rebbe, he says like this.
said something to the fact that I'm not really giving it with my full heart. I'm doing it more for myself. It's the Alter Rebbe told him like this: when the poor person who received the sandwich from you or the money and went and bought food from you, he's eating that food with his whole heart. I can promise you. So if you're giving it with your whole heart, those things that you're mentioning are completely irrelevant, right? But what's the point of the story? In other words, you keep giving charity. The poor man does not, he doesn't care about your ego and your non-ego and your kavanah and your heart. And he needs the food, make sure he has the food. The point of the story is that when you give charity, it's a physical act. It's irrelevant what's going on in your deeper inner soul, right? It doesn't make a difference. It's the action. So though there are mitzvahs that are soul mitzvahs, and there are mitzvahs that are more body action mitzvahs. The Alter Rebbe said in chapter 35, 36, and 37 that the action mitzvahs are the more important, not more important, but they accomplish much more. The ultimate accomplishment is through those mitzvahs. Why? Because what was the whole reason for creation? That God should have a dwelling place in the physical world. Not so much the spiritual world. Within this physical world, there's different parts. There's the soul. Our soul is in this physical world. Our bodies are in this physical world. What's more physical, our soul or our body? Of course, our body. So the mitzvahs that have an effect on the body are more accomplish the ultimate goal more than the mitzvahs that engage our soul. Because the soul is spiritual. And we know that it says the Kabbalah tells us that the soul was sent down to this world to enclose itself in a body. What was the ultimate purpose of that? Not so much for the soul. The soul doesn't need any perfection. The soul is perfect. The soul did not come down here to bring perfection to the soul. The soul was, if you want, the soul was more perfect up there than it can ever be down here. So what was the purpose for the soul's descent into this world? To engage in a body, to enclose itself in the human body, and to affect the body and to elevate the physical body. So when you have two mitzvahs, one is a soul-bound mitzvah, one is a body-bound mitzvah, a soulful mitzvah, a body mitzvah. Of course, the ultimate goal is the body mitzvah, the mitzvah that affect the body. So if you had to say which mitzvah, learning Torah and prayer, is more significant in terms of the ultimate goal for which God created the world, learning Torah and davening, or giving charity and shaking a lulav, what would you say? Giving charity and shaking a lulav, because that is affecting the very lowest realm, the physical. And that's why the Alter Rebbe said the physical action mitzvahs, that surpasses all, because that accomplishes God's goal more than any other mitzvah. Understood?
Yeah. Based on that, we can now begin chapter 38. In light of all that has been said above, one will clearly understand the decision of the halacha that has been laid down in the Talmud and the codes, meaning the code of Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch, that meditation is not valid in lieu of verbal articulation. Mm-hmm. So that if, for example, if one has recited the Shema only in his mind and heart, even with the full force of his concentration, his kavanah, he has not fulfilled his obligation, and he is required to recite it again orally. Similarly, with the grace after meals, which is a blessing, right? Which is ordained by the Torah, and also with other benedictions ordained by the rabbis, and with prayer. You have to articulate the words with your mouth. And this is very important because a lot of times people, I see this all the time, people read the prayers with their mind rather than with their mouth. They look in the siddur, but they're not verbalizing it. They're just reading it with their mind. That's not prayer. You're not fulfilling your obligation. Even if they did that with the full concentration, you must articulate it with your lips.
In any language, or?
In any language, yeah.
Even in 18, also?
Absolutely, yeah. You have to say, articulate it with your mouth. You didn't know that, huh? You didn't know that, yeah. Very important. Same thing with any mitzvah that we have, any mitzvah that is that you have to do with your mouth. Shaking a lulav is with your hands. Giving shot, but a mitzvah with your mouth, which is blessings, prayer, and those things, you must articulate it with your mouth. You can't just read it with your eyes. Now, when you think about it, this is a very interesting concept. Why is that? Let's talk about Shema. What is or blessings after meals, yeah? What is the Shema? What is the theme of the mitzvah of reading the Shema twice daily?
You're praising Hashem.
No, Shema is not so much about praising Hashem. Shema is more about accepting the yoke of heaven.
Right.
To believe in the oneness of Hashem, like you said, the unity, to accept the yoke of His mitzvahs. Where do you do that acceptance? In your mind or in your mouth? That's a mind thing. It's a mind thing. It's not a mouth thing. It's not something I can't accept upon myself God's yoke with my thought. I could. That's primarily where you accept it. I could say from today till tomorrow, I accept your yoke. But if my mind is not thinking about it, it's not. The mind has to accept it. Your heart has to accept. What is the mitzvah of prayer? To love Hashem. To develop a relationship, a love for Hashem. Where is that place where you love? Your mouth or your heart? Your heart. So you would think it's counterintuitive. Or let's take grace after meals. What is the purpose of giving a blessing to Hashem after you ate a good meal? To thank Him, to show gratitude for His good blessings that He gave you. You have what you need. Where's that? Where's that process? Where's that processed? In your mind, not in your mouth. So what's wrong with looking at the words and thinking about my praise of Hashem, thinking about my love for Hashem, having the full intent, the full kavanah, but not articulating the words? Why is that so crucial, the articulation?
It's not actualized.
Well, it's actualized in your mind.
But it's not brought into reality.
It's not actualized in
your physical.
Manifest.
To elevate the physical.
Well, let me try to understand what you mean by that. What do you mean it's not manifested? It is manifested in my mind. That's where it means.
But if it hasn't been articulated through the vocal cords and into vibration and sound, then that's when it goes out into the world. It has to start in your mind.
Does it have to go out
speech,
into the world?
action.
Why does it have to go? There's no action here.
No action.
It's not a mitzvah of action. Why? Then that's my question. Why does it have to go out into the world? It's mainly between me and God. My thanking Hashem doesn't have to go out into the world. It has to be a feeling of gratitude from me towards Hashem. That's more a mindful thing. You tell me to shake a lulav, I understand. You have to actually shake the lulav. You can't shake your lulav in a mind.
But you said the physical mitzvahs is more important.
Right.
And that's part of it, by articulating the words.
You're right. You're right. You're exactly right about that.
But I think...
We'll explain it. Yeah, go ahead.
If I am talking to myself in my head, Hashem knows it. He can...
Of course He knows it.
Yeah, but it's not physical.
Absolutely He knows.
By wording it, it becomes physical, and that's more important.
But here's an interesting point. Question is even more. These mitzvahs, let's take those mitzvahs of prayer, blessings, let's take those mitzvahs, The question is magnified as follows. In the mitzvah of prayer, there's two parts to prayer, right? Speaking the words out, articulating the words of prayer, and of course, what is prayer about? To develop a love for Hashem. So that is already something in your mind and heart. So you have the kavanah, the intent, and the actual articulation. What happens? Here's an interesting thing. These are two components that are crucial in the mitzvah, right? You must have the proper kavanah, and you must have the articulation. You must be praying with your mouth. Fine. But now let's take this and analyze this for a minute. The halacha of this is very bizarre. Imagine someone would pray with his mind with full intent, but he didn't articulate. What would you say? No good. You have to do it again, he said, right? The halacha is you have to redo it, and articulate it with your mouth. What happens if it's the other way around? You articulated it, but you didn't have the kavanah. You didn't think what you were saying.
This is bad.
Do you have to do it again?
Probably not.
What's your take?
It happens a lot of times that when you pray, your mind is somewhere
Right.
else. It does happen a lot.
It happens
of
more,
times.
more than the other that way, right? It happens too often, unfortunately. So the question is, you have two parts to a mitzvah. You have the kavanah and you have the saying the words. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
When you said the words and you lacked kavanah, do you have to do it again?
No.
The answer is you don't.
No.
As long as you said the words, even if your mind was wandering and you thought about baseball, you did the mitzvah. It's not the best way to do a mitzvah, of course, but the mitzvah has been done. The other way around is not the case. If you only thought about prayer, you thought the words, but you didn't actually articulate the words, you have to say it again. And the question is that the two parts of the mitzvah, right? This without this is good. This without this is not good. Why? Why is that?
Because it hasn't been brought into reality.
Reality, exactly. What does reality mean? But let's understand that a little better. What the Alter Rebbe is saying over here is based on this prior idea. Because the most important thing of what God wants in this physical world is Him to be able to penetrate the physical aspect of reality. In prayer, there are two parts. There's the spiritual part of prayer and there's the physical part of prayer. What's the spiritual part of prayer? The kavanah.
Intention.
What's the intention? What the feeling? What's the physical part of the prayer? The articulation, the words actually coming out of your mouth.
But,
1 second, let me just finish. So when you have the spiritual aspect without the physical aspect, no good. When you have the physical aspect without the spiritual aspect, that after the fact is good. You don't have to do it again. Why? Because again, the whole purpose of God creating the world and what is the ultimate we want over here is for His spirit, for His godliness, His essence to penetrate into the physical. Where's the physical? The articulation. In terms of prayer, it's the articulation because you're not doing anything with your hands. So the most physical part of prayer is the words that come out of your mouth. That's also considered an action. And the action is what counts. What do you say?
I just wanted to know when people are, the whole people in there, they are going to prayer, and they're going to prayer with your mouth, and talk and tongue. But then if he's saying something and I'm saying something, it's like everybody is doing it. They're not unless
They're not on the same page.
No, you're not supposed to say it loud to annoy them.
No. That's what you mean.
Okay.
If you, no, it
you're
says
gonna
that
whisper
if
or
you're,
something.
you should whisper it. You shouldn't say it so loud that you're disturbing someone else's kavanah intention.
Right.
That's true. You're right about that. Yeah, but you have to articulate the words.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the reason is because without the articulation, you're missing the action part of it. And the action part of it is the most important part of it. Because where does God want His dwelling place? In the most physical.
Very good.
Let's read it in Alter Rebbe's verse. Again, chapter 38. In light of all that has been said above, one will clearly understand the decision of the halacha that has been laid out down in the Talmud and codes. That meditation is not valid in lieu of verbal articulation. So that if one has recited the Shema only in his mind and heart, even with the full force of his concentration, the kavanah, he has not fulfilled his obligation, and he is required to recite it again orally. Similarly with grace after meals, which is ordained by the Torah, and with other benedictions ordained by the rabbis, like the blessings we say before we eat, right? That's not a biblical mitzvah, that's a rabbinical thing. Yet, and with prayer, so these must be articulated with your mouth. On the other hand, if he has uttered them with his lips, but did not intend with his heart, he has fulfilled his obligation. Ex post facto, not after the fact. That's not a preferred way to do it, obviously, but if it happened that way, you've done your obligation, you don't have to do it again. And he's not required to repeat them, except, there's one exception, for the first verse of the Shema and the first benediction of the Amidah. Those two, if you didn't have the intention when you said it, in addition to the articulation, if you just articulated and your mind was elsewhere, you have to repeat those. Shema Yisroel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, over there you must think what you're saying.
Okay.
Thus it is stated at the beginning of chapter 2 of Brachot. Up to here, the commandment of intention, kavanah, applies. From here on comes the commandment of recitation and so on. It's talking about the Shema. That the first verse, you have to have the intention. But from there on, if you don't have the intention, you just articulated with your mouth, you fulfilled your obligation. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have the kavanah. That of course you should, but if you didn't, then it's okay. The reason is that the neshama needs no tikkun, mending. The neshama comes down here. The kavanah is more related to the soul. Who has kavanah? Your soul. Who's loving Hashem? Your soul, right? So the kavanah is more related to the soul. Now we said that the neshama comes down here not for its own tikkun. Tikkun means perfection. The neshama is perfect. So it didn't come down here to start loving Hashem. It loved Hashem much more up there than it can never love Hashem down here. So the neshama doesn't come down here for its own benefit, for its own purpose. It has a different route for herself by means of the commandments, but has only to draw forth. Again, let's read this again. The reason is that the neshama needs no tikkun for herself by means of the commandments, but has only to draw forth its whole purpose is to draw forth light to perfect the vivifying soul, which is the God, the animalistic, the human soul, and body by means of the letters of speech, which the nefesh pronounces with the aid of the 5 organs of verbal articulation.
So your neshama is female?
Neshama is a female term, yes. It is, it's a female term. Neshama, that's in Hebrew, that's a female term.
What is the difference, Rabbi, between neshama and nefesh?
Over here, okay, so here's the question. Let me explain to you the difference. A good question. I don't want to confuse you, so I'll tell you 2 points. We're made up of, what is a human life made up of? The body, physical body, and then there's the soul that animates, that makes you up. What's the difference between a living person and a corpse? The soul. The body is the same. They both have all the organs, it's all there. The soul is not there anymore by the dead person, sadly. What's the soul? When you say the soul,
It's like, I don't know, God inspiration.
okay, let me explain. If you learned the earlier chapters of Tanya, you will know that we have 2 souls. Every human being has a soul. Whether you're Jewish, you're not Jewish, that makes no difference. Every body has a soul. An animal also has a soul. It's a different soul, but it's a soul. So when you say, I just moved my hand, what caused my hand to move? My neshama or my human soul?
The human
soul. The human soul is what animates my body. So who's moving my lips when I make that? When I make the bracha?
The human soul.
The human soul is that's the nefesh. In this, when you're talking over here in this paragraph, what the Alter Rebbe says nefesh, he means the nefesh chayunis, the living human soul, which we share with all human beings. Which makes our body a living body as opposed to a corpse, which doesn't have that living soul in it anymore. On top of that, we have a neshama, the godly soul, the uniquely Jewish godly soul. That is enclosed in the human soul. So they both work together they're in unison, so to say. Now the problem is that they're both pulling in two different directions, as we've learned throughout Tanya. The soul is trying to schlep the body to do mitzvahs. The human soul is trying to schlep the body to eat more chocolate cake. Right? And to pursue the more self-centered pleasures. That's the battle of life. Yeah, that's what it's all about. But the neshama, without the nefesh, can never do anything. The nefesh is what makes your body tick. So the neshama has to have the nefesh in order to be able to function within the body. But what's the ultimate purpose of the neshama? To perfect itself? The neshama in the heaven was much more perfect than as it comes down here. It's there to perfect the body and the human soul, which are so distant from godliness. Where I said, it's such concealment, they don't even recognize that there's a God in this world. Till you're convinced it, you have to talk to it, and over until you can, how hard is it to get a yid to make a commitment, to make us do it? It's hard. It's much easier to go watch television on a Sunday morning at 9:30. His favorite show, there's a lot going on television, right? Come learn Tanya, you have to, it's theoretical a little bit, it's out there, you have to make a commitment. So the neshama has to schlep the body and the human soul to shul. Human soul is not interested in going to shul. And the body is also not. Because God's not revealed in it, naturally. The neshama has to keep pounding at it. But without the human soul, the neshama can't do anything. So that's what the nefesh is. Now, that's one point. In other areas of Tanya, you will learn that the neshama itself has 5 levels. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yichida. The 5 within the neshama, there's a part that's called nefesh. It's the lowest aspect of the soul. But I don't want to confuse it. In this paragraph, the nefesh he's talking about over here is the human soul. So let's read this paragraph alone. Again, the reason is that the neshama needs no tikkun, mending. The neshama didn't come down here to do mitzvahs for itself, for herself, by means of the commandments, but has only to draw, the whole purpose is to draw forth light, meaning godliness, to perfect the vivifying soul and body by means of the letters of speech, which the nefesh pronounces with the aid of the 5 organs of verbal articulation. We know that there are 5 there's letters that come from the throat, there's letters that come from the lips, a B comes from the lips, a ches comes from the throat. They're the 5 organs of articulation, basically the speech, yeah? Similar, and then we're talking about over here with the mitzvahs of speech. Obviously, there's other mitzvahs that are more action, about. Similarly with the active commandments, which the nefesh performs with the aid of the other bodily organ, the hands, the feet, and so on. So why did the neshama come down here? To affect the nefesh and the body, which are the more distant parts of God, of course. They're the physical aspects of this, the physical part of it. So when you're in a mitzvah itself, you have the kavanah and you have the action, articulation, if we're talking about praying and those things, right? So what's more important? Not more important, but what reaches God's ultimate goal? What perfects with what part of the mitzvah have you accomplished God's ultimate goal? The kavanah or the articulation with your lips? Articulation with your lips. And that's why that's why as long as you did that, the mitzvah has been done. If you had all the kavanah in the world, but you didn't articulate, your neshama had a great experience, but your body and vivifying soul didn't. And that's what's important in everything in this world. And that's why you have to do it again. By the way, it reminds me of a story. It's not a story so much, but it's a story, but it's more a concept. When we learned Tanya and we learned these ideas, our teachers gave us the following example. There was a chassid that I knew. His name was Reb Mendel Futterfass. Reb Mendel Futterfass was a very, very special Jew. And I knew him well. Passed away 25 years ago, I think. Yeah, about 25 years ago. And he was a Jew that came from Russia, from the old home, And in Russia, he had been locked up in the prison gulag for 9 years. And even after he was let out of prison for 9 years, he was still kept behind the Iron Curtain for another 8 years. So he was separated from his wife and kids for 18 years in total. They had left Russia in 1946. He got onto the train. He because he was involved in getting Jews to escape Russia. It's a whole operation that he was in charge of. He ran it, and he was caught. So after he was from the last ones. His family left, and he was pulled off the train. He was caught. They had crossed the border. They went to England, and he was stuck in Russia till 1963. But for 9 years, he was in a gulag. So his wife would make sure to send him religious articles for the holidays, a siddur. When it came to Pesach, she would send him, try to get through shmura matzah to him. Sometimes it made it in, sometimes it didn't. Right? Sometimes he accomplished it, but I'm not sure how many times he got the matzah for Pesach and how many times not. My sense is that most of the times he didn't get it, because the minute they intercepted and found out that they're sending him matzah, they wouldn't give it, because they were anti-religious. Their whole thing was against religion. So imagine Rab Mendel Futervas on the night of Pesach. He's in the gulag. He's preparing mentally and emotionally to experience the Exodus and to have a Seder. And from memory, he would maybe even had a Haggadah that they slipped in, and he was able to read it. But he never got the matzah. The matzah he didn't eat. He didn't eat the matzah that night. He thought about matzah, the idea of matzah and all that, but he didn't have the actual matzah. Now, contrast that with another scene. Here in America in the 1960s, 1950s, you have a young American 18-year-old or 7, whatever 8-year-old, a teenager or a young adult, and comes the night of Pesach. He's a secular Jew. He's not interested in Pesach. He's interested in going with his friends to the ball game on Pesach. And this actually happened. I heard once a story. He was not really involved in the Pesach and the Seder. His grandfather held a Seder. There's some old-fashioned. He has other ideas. And he decided that he's going to go to the ball game with his friends. He's not interested in matzah. He's not interested in the Seder. Leave me alone. It's a long story. It's a long, dragged-out thing. So his mother tells him, you know what? Do me a favor. She packs him up a little bag. You're going to go to the ball game. What can I do? I'm not happy about it. But at that ball game, eat matzah. It's Pesach. Eat some matzah. He says, okay, I'll do you the favor. And he goes to the ball game. And he eats a kazayis of matzah. After nightfall, it's the night of Pesach. He's sitting in the Yankee Stadium, and he's chewing matzah, not because he's interested in doing a mitzvah. His mind is in the mitzvah, like mind is on the moon. His mind is in the baseball game. He's chewing matzah because his mother didn't give him bread because it's Pesach. So he gave him matzah.
So he fulfilled the mitzvah.
That's right.
Rab Mendel did not fulfill the mitzvah, and this kid did fulfill the mitzvah.
I get the analogy.
Huh?
Yeah, it's a good metaphor.
Yeah. But even though, when you think about it, this kid is the furthest thing from the Exodus from matzah and the whole idea of matzah. Rab Mendel is intertwined with the idea, he's one with the idea of the Exodus and the matzah. Unfortunately, in the final analysis, this one did the mitzvah and this one did not do the mitzvah. And you say that's so counterintuitive, it doesn't make any sense. But that's what it is, because in the end of the day, this kid, he knew it was Pesach. So it's not like he was totally oblivious to the fact that it was Pesach. So he did the mitzvah. Didn't do it with kavanah. He was really not interested. His mother got him to do it. But the mitzvah got done. God's light was drawn into this world through that action. Through the kavanah of Rab Mendel in the Gulag, the godly light did not get drawn into this physical world. Something happened. It's not like he didn't accomplish anything, but not as much as that kid in the Yankee Stadium. It's a very fascinating idea when you think about it.
Makes me think about television. Like, you really want to watch a show.
Yeah.
You can want to watch it as much as you want, but if you don't plug the TV in, no
Right.
show.
Yeah.
I mean, you need electricity, huh?
You need electricity, exactly. Mm-hmm. The action has to be done. Kavanah will not do it. Now, in the case of Rab Mendel, it's not his fault, and he's not going to. But he will not get the credit for, in the words of the sages, Eines Rachmone Patra, someone who is someone who is forced. He can't do it. It's not his fault, so he's exempt. But Kaman David Lo Amrinan, as if he did it, we don't say. As much as he wanted to do it, if he didn't do it, it didn't happen. You don't get the credit for the action. So it's an amazing concept.
It is.
Because you have to tune into a higher level of understanding of what a mitzvah is. If mitzvah is just about the human experience, no one is going to say that this kid is accomplished anything more than Rav Mendel. They're not even close. If it's a human, it's what the human being, the love, the connection to God. Rav Mendel was much more connected to God that night than this kid, in a sense. But ultimately, the test is not in your kavanah; it's in the action. And in that sense, that kid was more connected to God. He drew down God's essence into this world. Rav Mendel, unfortunately, couldn't do it. Not his fault, but he couldn't do it.
You said you have a point.
Yeah. So next week we'll continue.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
in the future, next part of this chapter, the Alter Rebbe is going to make a 180. And he's going to go the rest of the chapter. He's going to tell us how important it is that kavanah is. You must have kavanah. Why? Without kavanah, when you without kavanah, it's like the mitzvah without kavanah is like a body without a soul. What kind of thing is that?
So
It's a
you
dead
need-
mitzvah.
so you need both.
So we'll talk about it. We'll continue next week. Thank you very
There's
much.
no way you could do this without somebody teaching you.
Have a wonderful week, everyone. Thanks for watching.
It just becomes words.